I'm invincible. I'm paying money. The girl's happy. She's got no money. I got my rocks off. Oh, how good is this?
You're on Bound for Glory on Sydney, joined by myself, Jordan.
Ben.
Ethan. Other Jordan.
And Damon.
Well, we'll start off with last night's game. Obviously, Bombers take on Fremantle in a lot of hype going around this week, of course, with the whole Essendon drug scandal.
Which we'll cover later in the podcast as well.
Well, it thickens, the plot thickens.
There are a few more revelations overnight that I think need to be broken down. It's a wordy article. It's pretty heavy info drop to sort of process all in one go. So we'll sort of break that down, but I think we'll get to that later. We'll cover the game first. As you said last night, Essendon went over there. They won last year, Essendon, and I don't know what it is, and they always had something over Ross Lyon's St Kilda sides.
I think they've won 8 of their last 9 against Ross Lyon specifically, both at Freo and St Kilda, which is a ridiculous record for such a talented coach as we know. But Essendon were just fantastic last night. Their surge in the third quarter and holding on the last was fantastic. Their desperation, fighting for the footy, because they looked capitulated
shot.
a bit.
Yeah.
They looked shot. The Freo pressure was outstanding in the first half, and leading by 36 points at half time, keeping them to 11 was pretty much all that needed to be said in that regard.
And to come back from 5 goals down, in a normal conditions is credit to them. But in a really wet match like it was last night, it's awesome.
I think the way Freo play, they just can't sustain it for 4 quarters. I mean, looking at that tactic and that game plan, I don't know if it's just me as a fan of the round ball game, but there's a lot of, it's got its fingerprints on Ross Lyon's game plan. There's a lot of high pressing. There's quick counter attack. It bases itself around players getting around the ball in numbers and running in waves. And then they also run wide. They just don't run down the ground. The running patterns are complex, and I think that's something Ross has worked on. Obviously, Fremantle, they did that at the start. Essendon couldn't get players into the space to shut them down, and when they tried to move the ball out, the pressure was just too much. And they conceded the first 5 goals of the game, and you just thought Freo, they looked, again, like the Western Bulldogs last week. You thought, oh, this could be a really heavy loss here if Essendon don't stem the bleeding.
The goal kicking last night, I've never seen a more appalling game. Like, there was that many out on the fools, and not only were they, they've come off the side of the boot, they were absolutely shonked.
So it was raining, pretty heavily.
It was, but this happened on at least 4 or 5 times. Michael Hurley had a shot from about 40 out and ended up landing in Stuart Cromery's arms, and he definitely wasn't expecting it. And Matty Pavlich.
That was something you really don't expect from a player so classy.
No.
We have to admit, was absolutely touted by Jake Carlisle last night.
He was. And Carlisle looking really impressive this season.
Yeah, he started the year well. Just on that Pavlich kick, I really thought that was spot fixing for a minute. That looked dodgy.
No one can kick that bad.
To see Pav, especially Pav.
Yeah.
How much of this do you think is really helping Essendon keep its head above water? Because they're 3-0. They are 3-0, aren't they? Yeah, they are 3-0. If they were 0-3, would the Wolves be at the door with everything that's going on off field? And if they weren't performing on field, like 3-0, which is probably just saving them from widespread media ridicule.
Well, the Wolves are at the door, but I think the wins...
Well, if they were 0-3, the Wolves would be tearing apart the club.
They would be, but right now the wins have got...
blood on the walls and they'll be screaming. And
the wins of the shocker is the shotgun in James Hurd's hands that's keeping him alive so far. So, look, and most importantly, I think we've had losses to Melbourne in recent times, and the 2 in-state wins are both against pretty good sides in Freo and Adelaide. So, look, it's nothing to be just smeared off.
I wouldn't even say 0-3. If they lost heavily last night, considering what's happened in the last 48 to 72 hours, the Wolves would have, in this weird zombie wolf analogy we're using, they would be tearing down the door and eating everyone alive.
The door would be in a million shards of wood.
And Caro would be the wolf.
Hurley might have a broken wrist.
Yeah,
as per the paper this morning.
Yeah,
Second last contest of the night. Yeah, it didn't look. It wasn't a very comfortable landing by the looks of it.
So,
trapped under
so no Hurley next week if he's got a broken wrist, and no Ryder for the next month because he's gone skis.
Yeah, and Nick Comer probably looks to be out as well. He with a high bump there. So, look, not great news, but I think luckily Essendon doesn't have any injuries right now, so hopefully they'll be able to cover them.
Yeah, I think on the game itself, Fremantle did that thing they do so well, in which they did in the first half, which I think sets them apart if they can. And I think Fremantle can finish in the top 4 if they can keep that sort of game up for 4 quarters. They slowed after what seems to be a tactic of trying to affect every single disposal the opposition team has. You just saw that there were a few Essendon kicks out of defence that just got that Fremantle player within a position to affect it. And then there was a stoppage, and that worked in Fremantle's favour because they'd win the stoppage and the ball would come back down their end. And that completely fell apart. Essendon started to use the ball better in, again, as mentioned, conditions that were horrendous. And overall, they just worked harder, and they did exactly what Fremantle did. It was almost like a switch, like you'd say, clogged up the ball in their forward line.
We could so easily though. We could be talking about Essendon losing and the Wolves being in the canteen, because if Chris Mayne takes the extra month that he had to kick that goal in the last 30 seconds, or if Daniel Pearce's kick doesn't take a Shane Warne-like ball of the century leg break in the goal square.
That was Paul Duffield, I think.
Duffield, whoever it was. Then the result is so easily different. And you're not wearing an Essendon jumper and an Essendon scarf. And we're talking about how crap they are.
Yeah, look, I genuinely think that Freo should have won that, because that Duffield was looking to go straight through the middle.
It should have been.
That was the Gadding ball.
It was, yeah. I've never seen a ball spin so much. And then obviously Chris Mayne, I think he just didn't realise how much time he had. So yeah,
I think that was indicative of all the pressure around him, because Essendon were just ferocious in their attack on the footy, and the pressure.
Game of 2 halves, really.
It pretty much surged above Freo in their intent. And Chris Mayne, he did have a lot of time, but I'm not surprised that he missed it. I'm not surprised that he rushed to take the kick, because he probably was expecting a tackle right behind him.
So who do these two teams head against next week?
The Bombers have got Saints next week.
Ooh.
Fremantle would be pressed to think. That's a good question. I don't know. You've stumped us this early.
Hang on.
What have you done?
I can't Google it. I would expect the Saints. Well, Jesus, depending on how they go this week, I would not want to be the coming out on the losing end of that game next week.
Freo's got the Hawks next week.
Oh,
where
down here.
Down here.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, at Aurora.
Down
So down there.
Yeah. Down,
Let's,
right
like,
down.
What happens to the loser of next week's game between the Bombers and the Saints if the Saints lose this week? They lose this week and then they go into next week and lose their 0-4, and the Bombers are 4-0.
I think
Keep the Wolves out.
What we've taken, I think what we've taken out of St Kilda so far is that they're probably not a top 8 side or as good as what we thought they would be. Just using the last 2 years, they're again, fine late wise, just keeping their head above water. But now it seems as if they're going to spend some time short term in the bottom 8.
Either way, Brendan Goddard didn't enjoy that match, I would have thought, especially after his comments last night. He said it was. Did he say it was one of the best or the best?
One of the best.
One of the best.
Yeah. So what happens with St Kilda? Should they bottom out, or should they continue the way
do we
they're
not have
going?
a segment for that later on?
I think that's in the segment later on.
Yes.
Well,
Sorry about
jump
that.
ahead of me there.
Don't worry, write that down for later. Even it's a massive credit for Essendon, the way they turned that game around, and I think the point that Fremantle completely collapsed in on themselves was when they didn't kick those goals early in the second quarter. There was a few shots they had which just slid off the side of the boot, and that was the turning point. Essendon, they kicked a goal and they only went half-time 6 goals down, and you kick 1 or 2 early in the third quarter and you may only have 3 for the match, but you're only 4 goals down. It doesn't really matter. You can claw your way back, and they did that. Fair credit to him.
Credit to Hurd as well for changing up the game plan after half-time. He's obviously had a shocking week. But, to pull his team out of, 37 points down is a huge effort over there in a hostile environment with a hostile crowd and, rain and all that stuff. So
they sounded pretty hostile last night.
Credit has to go to him for that, even though, he's having an absolute mare at the moment.
I think, considering not only the conditions but the pressure, this is just a quick stat, Fremantle held the Bombers to under 50% kicking efficiency, had 16 fewer turnovers, 23 more clearances, 13 more inside 50s, and still lost.
Well, when you look at someone like Joe Watson, who leads by example, going at 35% disposal efficiency, that pretty much says the whole story.
Could never kick anyway. I mean, what?
He was nowhere to be seen for a lot of the game last night, Joe Watson, which was very unlike him.
Was Crowley on him, or was Crowley on...
Crowley was on Stanton.
Yeah, and De Boer was on Watson.
Yeah, but he worked his way into the contest later, because I think he had something like under 10 disposals to half time. He worked his way in, and he had some good plays. I mean, he didn't have his regular 30 disposals and the team lifting goal that he normally does, that he's made himself such a champion on, but he still was good last night.
No Brownlow votes for Joe.
No Brownlow votes, but it was a solid game.
David, put him down for no Brownlow.
In a game,
No Brownlow.
in a game where I don't think anyone really deserves Brownlow votes, because it was just a lot of players didn't really stand out. It was just a big rolling ball for most of it.
It was a cluster.
Yeah,
It was, yes.
Wet weather footy.
Cluster footy.
Speaking of wet weather footy, just quickly, some of those sliding rule interpretations.
Oh, that one against Cobber in the third quarter.
Yeah.
What was that?
That's so bad.
That was hilarious. People on Twitter calling for Kevin Bartlett's head, and I think justifiably.
I'm one of them.
I would have put him in a dumpster.
I was spewing. I genuinely
Or a
thought that
diaper.
Comet earned himself a free kick.
Yeah, so did I.
And
Imagine Kevin Bartlett in a big diaper. He was a dummy. Sorry.
Oh God, why did I imagine that?
That's a disturbing vision for 9 o'clock in the morning.
right, let's roll on. Let's move on to the drug saga. Eth, if you want to hit us off.
God, here we go.
Well, we had the article published by Mackenzie and Baker last night, who we know are the two top investigative journalists at The Age, and I think we got to kick off with that. It's 4,000 words of holy
So
crap.
let's read every single one of those words.
We won't read every single one of them,
Batten
because
down the hatches.
otherwise this podcast will go for 5 days. But
We get an Anne Hathaway soundbite in there somewhere.
But this is going as deep as it possibly could. We start off with, of course, the events during the week where Stephen Dank alleges that James Hird was also injected, not injected. That's not a real word. It's too early in the morning to say things like that. But James Hird was allegedly injected with blacklisted drugs throughout last year. I think some of them were anti-anxiety drugs as well.
Ubiquinone.
Ubiquinone. Melanotan was one of them, I think, which...
Melanotan 2.
Ironically, does have a tanning effect.
Die harder.
But I think they have anti-obesity effects and all that, and I'm not sure if they were being allegedly as well used on the players. But it was a fairly big claim from Dank to say that James Hird, there were rumours that he would step down because the saga was becoming too much and it would affect his game day coaching, and which it obviously didn't last night. But he released a statement denying the allegations and said that he can't wait to clear his name, and that he won't make another statement until the investigation's complete, as he should. And David Evans, the chairman of Essendon, said that Hird would not be judged until the conclusion of the investigation. No one will be stood down until it's complete, which is fair enough. You can't really...
Innocent until proven guilty.
Innocent
they're
until
running
proven
with.
guilty, basically. Andrew Dimitriou's comments were pretty interesting. He said that Hird would be held accountable if he was doing all these things that were being alleged against him, and he sort of suggested that Hird could stand down. I thought that was a bit odd for the biggest official in the game to suggest something like that. It was an odd comment to say that Hird might step down.
I think, and this is considering the revelations of last night, considering all things considered, I think people need to stop saying that, it's nothing, we can just let it be. No, this is, considering what I'm reading, this is horrendously serious. This is not only a investigation that surrounds and this is the thing, people look at it in football terms. They look at it, this is a club, they cheat, allegedly cheated, allegedly used a substance.
Buzzword for today.
Yeah, allegedly it is. For the next probably couple of months. Basically, it's not just a football club in trouble with a regulatory body. It's criminals involved. These are drugs that have not been... Is it TGA approved? Is that the regulatory body? Yes. And they are only moved in... These are controlled substances, and they can't be moved. So
Black market.
Black market, this is considered trafficking. And that's why they're not only taking their time and not releasing details. I'm saying release details. They can't release details. It's a criminal investigation. The ACCC are involved. And, obviously there are implicit links, allegedly, in this article to figures in bikie gangs.
Chinese black market
traders. It really reads like a surreal novel, this 4,000-word article.
Well, I mean, if the investigative journalist thing doesn't work out for Mackenzie and Baker, they can always start writing crime novels.
Which, just hold on, that's what people think this is. And I need to stress that newspapers will not publish something like this unless there are at least 20 to 50 sources corroborating this story.
And it should have read it like there are at least 50.
You know, the Age lawyers are just sitting around going, God damn it!
The Age's
Why do they
lawyers...
have to write the article so long?
Yeah.
4,000 words!
Damn it! The Age's legal team probably racked up over $1,000 in phone calls trying to see every angle, every possible way if they could get sued. No one publishes something this damning if it's some of it. Even if half of it's true, Essendon are in so much trouble it's not funny.
And you mentioned this off air, Ben, that normally these type of articles, these news-breaking articles are published at midnight and they have to wait till 12:30. And obviously they were checking every single specific detail going until the last minute. You have to... Because you have got to be so careful with these sort of claims.
Exactly. Considering McCake... Chook without a head there.
Head without a chook.
Considering
Hashtag
Mackenzie and Baker sit there at their desk. I've seen their desk. I've gone into the Age once or twice. I've seen their desk. It is awful.
Mr. Big Shot.
Hello.
Talk it up,
But
big
seriously,
through the
these are people
I've been to the Age,
who sit there
not a big deal.
for 3.5 weeks, maybe a month, working on one story. This is unbelievable what I'm reading here. And I think, Jordan, you've underlined some certain points here. I've got them over here.
Do what I can.
Dank, and this is, I think it will just sort of outline the basics. The main players in this, David Kenley, a businessman from a Melbourne company, Calzada, that developed the anti-obesity drug
Sounds
AOD.
like an Italian dessert, to be honest with you. I'll take the Calzada, thanks.
AOD 9604, that was used at Essendon, allegedly. Dank has stated that this drug is okay, and to this point in time it is okay. That being said, however, WADA's panel of experts this week signalled that AOD should be considered a banned substance under the catch-all provision of the code that forbids the use of drugs not approved for therapeutic use.
That's straight from the article as well.
That's straight from the article.
That's strike one.
And this is the thing.
3.
Even if Essendon are not done on this, and I really hope they aren't, because there are some serious punishments that come out of breaking. Because this isn't Asada, this is WADA, this is Lance Armstrong, type stuff. And I hope that doesn't happen to a football club. We do not want to see that, because that is doomsday scenario.
What is going to happen, do you think? Yeah. Do you reckon the club will actually be frozen, from the competition?
We'll get to that in a sec. I think that's a good question, because that's something I want to discuss. If that does not happen, if WADA do not deem and find some sort of loophole, that's fair enough, because we don't want to see that. That being said, the AFL will come down on Essendon for if that's true, using a drug that's not approved for therapeutic use. And some of the stuff is flat out, I'd consider it human testing.
Well, if you read this quote from Kenley, I'm quoting directly from the article, at this stage we had no firm animal data to indicate that it could work in a human in the ways that he, Dank, wanted. It's not approved for human use. Why are you giving it to AFL athletes? You wouldn't give it to...
guinea pigs.
Exactly.
I think the important thing for Essendon's sake is that obviously this drug isn't approved for human use, and that's not specifically a good thing itself, but obviously it's not against WADA, it's not blacklisted specifically, and you'd think the players as a result would be in the clear, so they wouldn't cop the 2-year penalties that have been rumoured by WADA and such. But the club as a whole, as an entire entity, would be... they basically cop a whole lot of everything.
Everything. And just considering that from what I read here, Cronulla appears to be in far worse state than Essendon, and this is a quote from the article, given its players use substances provided by Dank and which Asada is adamant, despite Dank's denials, are banned. In relation to the Bombers' use of AOD, even Asada's internal advice suggests the doping case around the drug is questionable. So we don't know if they will done for that, and I hope they're not done for that because we don't want to see that. And if it's not, I hope that it's not. I hope afterwards they make the change and ban the drug, not throw the book at Essendon, for obviously that is a grey area.
But every single person that, for whatever reason, wants to see Essendon or wants to see someone punished for this whole thing,
Essendon will get punished.
Yeah, no. But I'm saying, like, if what you're saying, like, you know, let Essendon off a little bit lightly and then make the drug illegal. If that happens, the next time this happens, people are going to go, well, Essendon got off and didn't have the punishment.
Like a precedent, yeah.
And, yeah, so...
Essendon won't get off. I assure you that the AFL will come down like a ton of bricks.
Yes, fine. But if the AFL come and say, all right, you play for no points for 6 months, Hurd has his coaching license taken out and, you know, Dank is sent to a Chinese prison, whatever. And then the next time this happens, let's just say North Melbourne doped up, it's proven, we get kicked out of the comp for 2 years, and Brad Scott is just executed. Like,
I think that's
people are gonna go, well, it's why did Essendon get off so lightly? Like,
why did Dank get a life sentence?
Why is
in
James
Chinese
Hurd
prison?
still alive? Why is he still alive in a Chinese prison? Like, why is this happening?
And this is what I think needs to be reminded.
Need precedent.
These regulatory bodies are always chasing an industry which experiments and changes, and they need to do the tests to ban something. And not only do they need to do the tests, but they need to find out about things. Like, they don't know what players are taking. Mm-hmm. Like, there could be someone right now, for all WADA and Asada using a technique that will probably be banned, but hasn't been caught yet, or no one knows about it. I mean, even moving on to that, the Trent Crode allegation made in The Age, which I think we need to tread very carefully here.
That was pretty
allegedly.
serious as
well. Allegedly.
Everything we're about to say has got quotation marks with allegedly.
Allegedly, it's quoted in The Age. Yes. It's there.
Alleged.
And moving on for that point is that they're always chasing the tail of these drugs. In the emails that were allegedly sent to the Melbourne Football Club offering these substances, Crode allegedly writes, nobody, keep this confidential. These drugs, they're a secret. They're a, it's a
off the market.
Off the market. They're experimental in their not only their use but their effects. And you're always chasing a tail, and that's what people need to remember. That if Essendon are found with this substance at the time, it technically is a grey area. And this is a grey, and I really hope that there aren't 2 year suspensions. Worst case, if they do decide to use the loophole for all the players, because that's a disaster. We can't have that in the game.
I was sorry.
You were saying.
No, I was gonna say I was talking to a guy at the footy club I play for who works in security, and he said that I showed him the text messages that the Bombers have rumoured allegedly to be sending between Hurd and Dank, and he said he couldn't believe that the people would be so stupid as to leave the evidence lying around in a format which just is never deleted. Once it's on the internet, like an iMessage is, it stays on the internet. It's there. You can get it if you need it. And he said he couldn't believe that with something so risky in a football club in a city which runs on football and consumes everything that there is to know about football, that they would leave evidence like this lying around. Yeah. He couldn't believe that they were so stupid.
And I mean, just the way, I think even indicating that I don't think it was maybe stupid. I think that maybe they thought it was a grey area at the time. And technically they're right, because there's no hardcore pinning on this drug. And that's why this David Kenley, and he's a straight businessman.
He seems like a stand-up.
No, he's a straight
nice bloke.
Straight businessman who was using this drug as and funding the
non-straight businessman.
funding the experimentation for the anti-obesity drug. You know, he he went to Dank when he found out that it was being used for, I think it was recovery and weight loss. Yep.
To take out the fat pockets.
Yeah.
Bodybuilders. Sorry.
Yeah.
So AFL players are pretty fit. They don't really have fat pockets anywhere, unless you're Stephen Milton. But like anti-obesity drugs, like AFL players have pretty much no chance of becoming obese during their careers.
Yeah, but it's a production of human growth hormones in it that are the problem.
Right.
Because that
shows I don't know
is unnatural.
Now, what I noticed was interesting. I think that was the same drug that potentially is going out to pharmacies for anti-cellulite treatment. Is that?
That's what it was marketed as originally.
Yeah, marketed.
So now, hang on.
So it was cosmetic rather than...
It was cosmetic, and then it failed the initial standards of the regulatory board, so it was withdrawn, but this businessman has continued to fund trials.
Yeah.
Which is more than entitled to do.
Which he is. I mean, that's a legal thing. That's how drugs get on the market.
That's how drugs become drugs.
Exactly. And the thing was, he didn't know. This businessman by the name of David Kenley did not know that in China this was being sold and to people here in the US and Europe for these bodybuilding contests. And the issue in it is the human growth hormone aspect.
Have you ever seen a Chinese bodybuilder? Think about it. Have you ever seen a Chinese bodybuilder? You haven't.
That's a good question.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
For 9 o'clock in the
seen a
morning, I
Chinese
can't answer
bodybuilder?
you straight.
Where are they giving these Chinese bodybuilders? Where are the Chinese bodybuilders?
Where are they located?
Is that the single bullet
I reckon Nick McKenzie and Richard Baker need to jump on the Chinese bodybuilder angle because I've never seen one and I doubt they exist. Where are these bodybuilding supplements going in China?
To Europe and the US.
No, get McKenzie and Baker on it. This is the next one, boys. That's the next month.
And with the
sleep at your desks.
Just with the grey area there, with them taking these supposedly banned substances, does the blame fall on Essendon because they were negligent? Should they have first approached Asada and WADA and the anti-doping authorities first before actually taking the substances?
They might not have been allowed to do it.
Yeah, that's right. That's true.
Well, there definitely is a degree of negligence, especially in hiring Stephen Dank, who wasn't an accredited sports scientist, and letting him run amok basically with the budget allegedly, and doing all this because this story is incredible. All the detail of the drugs that were involved is astounding, and it really has put a lot of information against him that it's not leaving him in a good position, that's for sure. And I think Essendon do have to hold some sort of responsibility and accountability for that if all those claims are true.
And this is just my opinion, but I think what will happen is, and you asked before, what do you think the scenario will be, the end game? In my humble opinion, Essendon won't get done by Asada. They will get out via this loophole, which is fair enough. That being said, the negligence shown by Essendon to not only, as you said, Ethan, hire a man who not only didn't get his background checked for the way he lost his previous jobs, but the way he was allowed to ultimately run a fitness and sports science program using drugs that are not TGA approved, the AFL will come down very hard on Essendon. Now, will that be loss of points? No, it will not be loss of points, but a lot of people will be losing their jobs. A lot of people are losing their jobs, and I strongly doubt that Bomber Thompson and James Hird will get out of this unscathed. Now, I'm not saying that they should go. This is completely different to what Caroline Wilson and, saying, hey, you should go, this hysterical rubbish. I just honestly think that someone has to take the blame, and considering who the head of the football department isn't there anymore from my...
Yeah, Paul Hamilton's gone.
Paul Hamilton's gone. Danny Corcoran came back.
Yep.
Dean Robinson, James Hird, and ultimately Mark Thompson, because he introduced...
He did.
Mark Robinson, who brought Stephen Dank into the club.
Right here, quoting directly from the article, Dank had been hired at Essendon on the recommendation of fitness guru Dean Robinson.
Yep. And I think at some point, either Hird or Bomber Thompson are going to come under some sort of heat for that. Now, that's what I think is going to happen, at the very most. They're not going to get banned for 2 years. That I cannot see a scenario...
I can.
You
I
can
see the AFL coming out, trying to get on the front foot. I'm mixing sports metaphors. Getting out on the front foot and trying to, really lay down the law in terms of this and giving Essendon a really, really good rogering just to say to the rest of the league, don't do this, or we will.
There will be rogering,
ruin you.
But you can't take.
It'd be gentle, slow and gentle.
Yeah, but you've got to remember the AFL needs to look after.
You don't roger someone slow and gentle.
Look after 50,000 members and a supporter base, and they'll lose money if Essendon don't play for points. No one's going to show up.
Yeah.
They're going to lose revenue.
Yeah.
So the AFL are always going to balance that against whatever punishment they
The
give.
punishment has to fit the crime, and the crime is a serious crime.
But they've got to do their utmost to keep the club as well.
Essendon's not going to go
going
under
on as
because
successfully as they can and keeping them in the league and doing all they can. But
Yeah.
at the
no
same
one turns
time,
up to Melbourne
handing down
games
this-
anyway. They didn't ever dope.
But at the same time, handing down the most severe punishment they can to say to Essendon and the rest of the league, don't do this. This is illegal.
This is bad.
This is
So
wrong.
best case scenario, probably
No.
bringing the game into disrepute.
Yeah, a large fine.
And a large fine.
Sport, country,
And I don't think that's fair enough.
sports science.
I think it's
Stripping of draft picks and loss of obviously fines. That's not
that's
punishment to suit the
Joe
crime.
Danaher to North Melbourne.
I don't think so. No.
No, I just think that people, and this is my ultimate gripe with this whole thing, is that stop looking at this as just a sports thing. There is a genuine criminal aspect involved. There are people making large amounts of money on the black market selling these drugs. Not only, and from what I read, the clinic using some of these drugs, one of these clinics, anti-aging clinics, was shut down. Using one of these drugs, everyday people, businessmen who are stressed or tired, just quoting from the article, and
Yeah,
everyday
I think
people.
one of the quotes was that the average client was a 30-year-old tired, stressed male or something
exactly.
like that.
Let's just give him Swiss.
Yes.
right.
Quoting directly from the article again, Dr. Robin Wilcott describes his typical patient as a 30-something male feeling stressed, tired, and lacking in libido.
Yeah, I mean, that's...
His
That
clinic
herd
also
fish
treats-
fits the
Well,
category.
yeah.
we don't want to insinuate anything there, James.
No, we don't need to insinuate anything, but why was he taking melanotan 2 melanotan?
Well, allegedly.
harder?
Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly taking it, and the only benefits... I'm just pointing at you with this. But the only benefits are better tan, bigger erection.
Did you notice anything last night in Cremati? As he
the-
walked out into the field?
Do Channel 7 need
Walking
a
around
camera?
knocking
Yeah.
laptops off the bench was a dead.
Channel 7's camera at the moment couldn't catch her anything, I wouldn't have thought.
Yeah, I think just what people need to keep in mind is, of course, Essendon are innocent until proven guilty.
Geedy.
But
Simon
it's one of those
Geedy.
mornings. I think we've had 3 stuff-ups already.
I think all 3 of them by you.
But if...
Ben.
Yeah, I know. You had one.
Let's move.
Let's
Yeah,
move
let's
on.
move on.
Hold
Come
on,
on.
but just one more point.
Oh.
Essendon are innocent until proven guilty, but people can't complain when these allegations are made. We have a freedom of press, and these things, and the press, you've got to remember the role of the media. The role of the media is to make sure that due process takes course. Now, if the media does not scrutinise the investigation or cover it, there are chances, and I'm not saying that Asada or WADA are dodgy, but the media's there for a reason. You can't go bashing it. And the same way Matthew Lloyd gets on here last night and says the Age are out to get Essendon and the Herald Sun are defending them. What, do you think a newspaper can do that, can get away with that?
No, they have to be balanced. Now,
Exactly.
look, let's go on to the other big story of the week, of course, the D's. It's looking pretty bleak, but there is hope for the D's fans. The hope simply comes from the success of their VFL affiliate, the Casey Scorpions. Now, I'm dead serious about this. There's
Going to replace that?
That's what they're hanging their hat on.
No.
Casey.
There's been plenty of finger pointing this week at Jack Watts, Colin Sylvia, Mark Neild, and obviously Cam Schwab, who's been stood down or pushed to resign, really. The D's have been rebuilding since about 2007. They've gone absolutely nowhere with that. And it's not the players that they've drafted that's been the problem, but rather the way that they've developed the players. They've had to chuck the players straight into massive losses, been unable to build a winning culture, and it's just, the whole mindset of the D's players, it's rubbish. So to look at a more successful development, look at Geelong. They've got plenty of young stars, and they haven't had to bring them in all at once. They've been able to introduce them with their VFL affiliate. They've got their own. Now, George Holland-Smith came in the top 5 of the JJ Liston Trophy last year, and he's still unable to break into the Cats AFL side. So, in the last couple of years, Melbourne's drafted Frawley, Pettit, Garland, Grimes, Martin, Watts, Blease, Strauss, Scully, Trengove, Gisberts, Tapscott, Cook, Howe, Tumpus and Viney. Now, those are some fantastic names, and a lot of those guys have received Rising Star nominations, shown immense talent in spurts. And, so they've obviously got talent, but it's just the way that they've been developed, really. So if these guys were able to spend more time in a winning VFL team like Casey and understand the winning culture, then I seriously think that they could become a lot more consistent, and as a result, Melbourne would be better. So I've got a solution, although it's got plenty of flaws, but so you guys can rip into me for that. So now that Schwab's been moved on, there should be a bit of cash freed up. I believe what they should be doing first and foremost is chase after a whole new development team, even throw some cash at the guys down at Geelong, see if they can snare someone there. Casey can win games and instill the winning culture in the D's youngsters. Jack Viney has clearly got this winning culture, and partially because he was able to spend a whole year with them last year, obviously being unable to play AFL. So, yeah, use the freed up money to chase a new development team, keep the recruiting staff, and aim to keep as many of the talented players as possible without paying overs to keep them. And potentially find a big-time CEO, not a former D great like Lyon, Flower or Neats, but someone who can really run the club. So, and as to Mark Neal, I believe they should keep him as well. I don't know.
He's not a senior coach.
Well, he's not.
He's a fantastic assistant coach. You could coach juniors, you could coach the VFL. He's not a senior AFL coach. He's not mentally strong enough.
That's a pretty big claim to make. Someone 25 games into their coaching career.
He's not an AFL coach.
Well, who do you suppose they could get? They could
Don't
potentially
care,
still
because he's not taking that list.
There were
anywhere
suggestions
near
that
finals.
they're going to chase Sheedy.
Well, you say
That was Damien Barrett.
You say Chase Sheedy and Damien Barrett, and this is one thing that a lot of people are coming out and saying: Chase Sheedy, Chase Ruse, Chase Norm Smith's ghost. No one is taking that list.
From the
Look,
ground.
exactly, no one is taking that list anywhere near at the top 8. Mark Neild is stuck there with a bunch of, bunch of spuds and a bunch of talented footballers, conversely, who are lazy and need to kick up the arse, especially one Colin Sylvia. And I don't know where the expectation is that if you change the coach, that whole list is just going to automatically become a competitive side.
Like the other Jordan said, and he went through the list of players that they've drafted since 2006. If you look at their top 20 picks since 2007, you've got Cale Morton gone for pick 88 to West Coast at pick 4. Then you've got Jack Grimes at 14, who signed for 3 years. He's a gun. He's a good player. He bleeds for the jumper. Yeah. Other names: Tom Scully's gone. Jack Trengove, nowhere near where he should be at the moment. If his development is nowhere near where he should be. He's an absolute elite junior footballer, and he's nowhere near it at the moment.
I think he's worse in his 4th year than he was in his first. To be honest.
Lucas Cook, pick 12, gone. Playing at Casey. Who else is there? Gisbert's gone. He's at North. You've got Luke Tapscott, hardest bastard I've ever seen come through one of the 18s teams. He's playing at Casey.
Yep. He's back this week, but
because he lost by 148 points.
Ricky Pettit as well.
Gone at Richmond.
I think
it just gets worse.
Yeah.
The coach and the development staff are two entirely different. In the modern AFL sense, the way clubs are structured, they're two entirely different departments. And yes, it needs to change. They need to throw money at. Obviously, you suggested someone from Geelong. Now, I don't think Stephen Wells would move, but maybe someone of that experience level is definitely required down there, because what in the hell is happening to those talented footballers that get sucked in the black hole and they never come out?
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how Gisbert's goes at North, and if Jack Watts manages to get out of the tornado shelter. If he gets out and goes to a different club, how he'll go.
Even Ricky Pettit.
Ricky Pettit goes at Richmond. How Lucas Cook, can he turn his career around playing from Casey?
Steph Martin as well.
Adam Marriage is tearing it up. Steph Martin at Thingo. Brent Maloney at Brisbane. Adam Marriage playing at Werribee. He's kicked a couple of goals in both games that Werribee have played. Like, is there a trend of players getting out of Melbourne and then going up? Becoming better footballers.
I think we'll need more data before, but it's looking like that could be the case, that there is some serious development stifling happening.
Well, I think the thing you mentioned with Geelong, I think it's the difference between Melbourne and Geelong, obviously, is that Geelong have had a lot of success over the past 5 or 6 years and Melbourne haven't, so it's pretty easy for those youngsters to develop, and someone like George Hall-Smith to look off Jimmy Bartell and Gary Ablett in his earlier years and Paul Chapman and all those absolute stars of the competition and learn off them, and someone like Jack Trengove walking into the club and looking at, well, he's got no one to look at. And I think it started when you look at players like James McDonald and Cam Bruce walking out of the club. They moved on, not signing contracts. I mean, fair enough that Cam Bruce didn't sign a 2-year contract when he did. He wasn't offered one. Eventually, he didn't do much at Hawthorn anyway. But looking at players like those who were leaders at the club, and you got to have someone to look at when you walk into the club. Someone like Cal Morton, he was good in his first couple of years, and he sort of had that support around him. But after that, he was thrown into the wild, and he didn't have anyone to look up to and say, all right, I've got someone to learn off, and I've got someone to mentor me essentially through my AFL career and let me develop. And Melbourne haven't had that over the last 8 years, basically, or 7 or 8 years, basically.
And they run the risk. Sorry, Damon. They run the risk of that continuing, because if they don't have any senior players, if everyone jumps ship by the time they turn 30, like Maloney did, like Martin did, the only senior players that go to that club are Nathan Jones, who bleeds for the jumper, and Colin Sylvia, who doesn't give a shit.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Colin Sylvia, like, coming into the club, that's all I've got. Like, and you look at Colin Sylvia, and he's got no application, doesn't care. For a senior player, that's just not good enough.
It's like if you equate it to walking into Geelong and having Matthew Scarlett, Corey Enright, James Kelly, Joel Corey, Gary Ablett, everyone standing there ready to give the young players advice, and you walk into Melbourne and Colin Sylvia's like in the corner with a beer, and Nathan Jones is like crying because he's the only person that gives a shit about the jumper. And you're a young player that walks in there and goes, well, how the hell am I supposed to learn how to play football from senior players if we've only got 2 and only one of them gives a shit?
Yeah. I think the perfect example of why Colin Sylvia is not the player he should be is the fact that Trengove and Grimes are both co-captains. So I think Sylvia was the perfect age, perfect experience, the perfect player, basically, if his work rate and application was at the level it should be to be captain. And he wasn't. And he wasn't given that role because he simply doesn't try hard enough, and he doesn't have the application to put him where he should be, because he's an enormous talent. We've seen that. He's had some absolutely brilliant games where he's turned the match on its head, and if you don't have the work rate, you're not going to do that. You're not going to have a successful AFL career, and I don't think Sylvia has had that.
Disappointing.
Yeah. Look, let's go to our next segment. Jordan, you want to kick us off with this?
Rowan Connolly scooped me. Friend of the show, Rowan Connolly, scooped me because I was going to talk about where everyone is after round 2. And there's some like real surprises, because there's some teams that are genuine premiership favourites, like West Coast, who are 0-2, haven't won a game. Obviously, North Melbourne is 0-2. Carlton, who were widely tipped to make sort of top 8 with Mick Malthouse, 0-2. St Kilda, who probably don't deserve to be 0-2. No one would have had them 0-2 playing the Gold Coast in the first couple of rounds. And then Port Adelaide at 2-0. Essendon at 3-0. It's the competition's really been turned on its head for most people's tips, I suppose. I mean, would any of you guys have tipped Port to be in the top 4 after 2 rounds?
Well, I think playing Melbourne and GWS, it probably wasn't at the top of my expectations, but they got a much tougher draw in the next few rounds than they did at the first 2.
I think it's got more to do with the draw. Like with North, they faced off against Collingwood and Geelong. You know, both finals teams and experienced sides, and Carlton as well. I mean, they probably should have beaten Richmond, going by previous years. But then they had Collingwood, got Geelong tonight, then they got West Coast, Adelaide, and then finally we got Melbourne. So hopefully should get a win there. But they've been pretty tough.
The big thing for me is West Coast. I mean, I probably would have tipped them to win the grand final this year, but they've got a very old, very good ruckman in Dean Cox, who is shouldering way too much of the load with Nick Nat out. They've got no Mark Lacroix, they've got no Daniel Kerr, Eric McKenzie's out, and they're bleeding goals. And Hawthorn took them to the cleaners at Patterson's, and I think once they get all those players back, they'll be better. But they're like the massive surprise for me at this stage in terms of being 0-2 and struggling.
Kerr and Lacroix come back this week.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. But even so, like I would have expected them to win. At least I would have expected them to beat Freo in the first round. I reckon they would. I would have tipped them to be 1-1, but 0-2 is it's not good.
I think, considering, and this is I think a reoccurring thing over the last couple of final series, it's been essentially the same top 6 teams with 1 or 2 going in and out. I think, and this is my tip for mid-year, by round 11 you will see some teams in the top 8 that you didn't think you'd see there. Now, I don't know which ones they're going to be, but it seems like there's always a year every 5 years in which things change. Like a changing of the guard in a sort of way. I think Hawthorn have become vulnerable. I think West Coast have become vulnerable. I think Collingwood are playing well. They're batting very deep, but you can't bat deep all year. I think the teams that were previously... Sydney aren't at the top of their game at the moment. Mm-mm. The teams that were previously unbeatable, and then you look at the teams down the bottom of the ladder, Port Adelaide aren't the basket case they were. The Gold Coast are going to be more competitive. GWS are going to have another year into them. This will be the year where... Everyone thought last year was achingly tight. This is going to be a year in which we're going to see some things start to change. We're going to see a lot of results we're not going to pick. And we're just seeing teams falling out of... I don't want to say falling out of their premiership window, but falling on a line in which they're no longer unbeatable, even when they play okay. So we're going to see... Round 11, I assure you, there will be teams in the top 8 that you didn't think would be there.
Who's going to be in the top 8 that I didn't think would be there?
I'm not suggesting they'll be in the top 8, but I think I wrote this on Banff Glory News, which is a fantastic site, and you should all check it out. That I think there's a legitimate case for Gold Coast to be 4-4 by round 8, and possibly in the top 8 by then. Probably not by the buys and all that, because they have a tough draw after that. But
a lot of people didn't think was cynical about Richmond. I think Richmond will definitely be in the top 8 come middle of the year. I think a lot of people expected Geelong to drop off again. They'll be in the top 8 again.
Why do people keep predicting that Geelong will
drop
off?
Know.
They just don't. It's just,
I don't know.
They're like Sydney.
A lot of people didn't think Fremantle will take the next step, regardless of last night's result, from what I've seen from Fremantle. And if they can keep that effort for 4 quarters, they'll be there in the top 8, potentially top 4. I have incredible raps for them. I just think that this is the year where a lot of lists are coming to the point where they're starting to tip over the edge, and a lot of other lists are starting to come up, and a lot of breaching that average games.
It's a transition year.
Yeah, it's a transition year. You're going to see a lot of results that, even that in the first couple of rounds, a few people going, wow, that actually happened. This will be that year.
And, of course, Essendon as well, now being 3-0.
Exactly. Who put Essendon in their 8?
I don't think many of us did.
Yeah, just me.
Yeah.
the man with the Essendon jump from the scarf on the table. So.
And I'm not even sure if it's bias. I felt uncomfortable about Richmond, and I'm going to say it right now, I'm definitely wrong.
Bias in there somewhere.
Nah.
I mean, even on other bottom teams, the Western Bulldogs, they haven't been horrible at all. No. They've been fantastic. They've had to put in effort. They're running. They're not the best users of the football, but they always have a crack. And
in fact, I think really the only team you can say that hasn't had a fair income go at a game yet, and I'm sorry, Heath, but it's Melbourne.
Yeah.
That's fair enough.
Like, the only team that you can genuinely say hasn't looked like winning at any stage has been Melbourne.
Yeah, that's
every other team in the league at some point during a game this week or in the last 2 weeks has had a fair income crack at it. Like, could have won.
Yeah, essentially. They're the only team that... And they've had the pressure come down on them because they haven't. They've put in 2 completely inept performances 2 weeks on end.
Yeah. That
are completely unacceptable at AFL level standards. And I think on that, we're going to see maybe more unpredictable results. We're going to preview now the games for the rest of the weekend. The first game down at Blundstone Arena at 1:45 this afternoon. North Melbourne take on the Sydney Swans. North Melbourne, 2 weeks in a row, looking like they were going to push all the way to the end, but obviously Collingwood in round 1 pushed past them right at the death, and Geelong got them at the end. And I think the only thing North Melbourne need to be concerned about is turnovers. If they can fix that, they'll start winning these games against quality opposition.
Jordan, you pointed out that Lindsay Thomas is the best small forward in the league.
Best small forward in the NFL, yeah.
Pure small forward, yeah. So
I don't even think he's a pure small forward. I think he can go in the midfield. But in terms of output in the forward 50 and tackling and chasing, he's the best small forward in the NFL. Better than Betts, better than Milne, better than Ballantyne, better than McGrath.
Betts. Jeez. I'm going to have to
Come
disagree.
at me with your opinion.
Well, I believe Eddie Betts is, as much as I hate him, and Stephen Milne are the 2 premiers. So, look, should we go around the table for tips this weekend?
Yeah, totally. Let's do it.
Sydney, I think that they'll be able to stifle that ball movement and get a result. North Melbourne, again, they'll push and they'll probably only lose by a couple of goals, but I just can't see it today. I don't know what it is.
Sydney by not very much, I think. Again, as you mentioned, if North can get it forwards and quality boys, I think the 3 tall forwards that North have, and almost 4 of Majak Dor. There was rumoured that he'd be included this week, but he's named as an emergency, so maybe you don't know. But I think Sydney by not very much.
I'm going to let my bias creep in. I think we can get them. I think North can get them down in Hobart.
Just quality phrasing, yes.
Sydney are not on their game. I think North are desperate to atone for 2 really close losses to good sides. And I think this week will be the week.
I don't think Sydney are in top form yet, as we suggested earlier. I mean, they've come up against pretty weak opposition, and whereas North have been pretty competitive against good sides. So I reckon North can push Sydney.
I mean, who gives the reigning premiers the 2 expansion sides in the first 2 rounds? What genius at fixturing came up with that?
But I'm going to go with Sydney in a close one. But I would not be surprised if North topple them.
I've been burnt last 2 weeks tipping North, and I'm going to keep the faith, but I'm going to go with them again. So North.
I think we can almost skip this one due to the massive consensus
I
over
think
Melbourne versus West Coast.
West Coast.
The MCG at 2:10 today. Jesus, Melbourne need to put in an effort today because they will get absolutely belted. Now they might suffer a reasonable loss, even if they do put in an effort, maybe a 8-9 goal loss, but you can't let that happen 3 weeks in a row, considering Port Adelaide aren't exactly the greatest of sides.
Melbourne are going to get beaten by 120 points today. 120.
Yeah,
is going to
I
be
completely
$20.
agree.
Even if they put in the effort.
Because they're just not that good.
No.
It's not good enough to beat West Coast, and they're not good enough to get close.
Yeah.
Especially with West Coast bringing back the premier, one of the premier small forwards in the competition in Mark Lacroix, and a
All-Australian mid in Daniel Kerr.
horse in Daniel Kerr.
There's some big ins. I think, West Coast. But
Yeah.
I don't think there's no debate on who's going to win this.
I think that's
West
consensus here.
Coast by how far?
Can anyone come up with an idea of how Melbourne can win?
West Coast players
They
all
can't.
get typhoid and they have to be quarantined in the hotel, and they play the game anyway, and Melbourne win. Melbourne just stroll in and
No, Melbourne would still find a way to lose that.
yeah, probably.
And there's some notable outs as well with their recruits in Roden, Gillies, and
Jack
those
Watts.
2 recruits. And I was going to say Watts is pretty much the
Watsy.
recruit. Plays like a first-year player.
First
Yeah.
girl.
But it's disappointing to see those guys are already out of the team. But the West Coast, a massive win.
Yeah. So all around the board. So next game.
GWS and St Kilda at Manuka Oval.
Wow.
And
No, you mean Star Trek Oval. Star Trek Oval, bro.
I was hoping Nimbin Caravan Park were going to throw in some dollars. And
Julia Gillard Arena.
The Honourable Prime
Yeah,
Minister.
the Right Honourable Julia Gillard.
Jesus Christ. Basically, yeah, I don't think. Does anyone think GWS could win? Give me a reason
Yes.
why they can win.
Yeah, they'll
Give me,
win.
come on, hit me.
John Patton, Jeremy Cameron.
Dylan
There's 2
Shield.
reasons.
Yeah, Dylan Shield be top.
He's had a massive year so far. He's been fantastic in his clearance work. He's an absolute brilliant talent.
Horse.
And I think if GWS can trump St Kilda in the clearances and get it forward with more quality use, Patton and Cameron, as mentioned, quality tall forwards, and coming against a not so quality backline in St Kilda because he got Dempster out for 3 to 4 weeks with a broken hand.
Saints are terrible at the moment.
Tom Simpkins languishing in the VFL for some reason, I don't know. But if Patton and Cameron can get on top, I think GWS can win.
Yep. I'm tipping GWS by 5 goals.
Whew, that's a big call.
I'm going for big calls
That's
this
a
week,
big
right?
call. You're just dropping
ripping
bombs.
dropping bombs from there.
Yeah. I'm going
Big
GWS
calls,
as
big
well,
calls central.
in it, but probably a little bit closer than 5.
I'm going to stick with the Saints, but yeah,
Saints.
just be competitive.
Saints, but I'm not going to be surprised if they fall over at the line and something happens and GWS get up. I wouldn't be surprised, but St Kilda should do it.
Geelong versus Carlton should be a good game at Etihad Stadium tonight. Geelong obviously in good form and Carlton not so much, so it's going to be a very good contest. We know these are 2 good teams and they always seem to put on a good match when they do face up, but Geelong seem to have the superior record over them in recent times. I don't know what it's like 9 of their last 10 at Etihad or something, or 10 of their last 10 at Etihad, which is a fair streak over a team. You don't see those sorts of things very often nowadays in AFL, so I think that'll continue with Geelong. They've still got so many quality players on the side, and players like Bartel and Chapman and Corey are still going along at nearly the same output that they did in their premiership years, and I think that's the reason they'll win.
They just find a way to win. They will always find a way to win. They've got too much quality in that side still, playing at really high levels, like you mentioned, Ethan, not to win, and they'll beat Carlton.
Can we see a drop-off tonight? Do you think that there's a chance that,
We've
considering the intensity of the last 2 weeks, which have had to lift, is there a chance that it could...
We've been tipping a drop-off for Geelong for 3 years. And it hasn't
Not
happened.
tonight.
No, it's not going to happen tonight.
Not one night.
Culminate tonight.
I've got the Cats here.
I reckon Carlton will lose it based upon their 2 inclusions of Joseph and Hampson. Hampson I do not rate. He is replacing Caspol. Caspol's a more genuine forward. Big mark, I mean, he's got to improve upon his kicking, but Hampson is not a key forward. And Joseph, I don't rate him as a player, but it's good to see Scotland back in.
Good to see Dylan Buckley in for his first game,
Tiny
father's
man.
son.
Yeah, is he still a stick at this stage?
Yeah,
Yes.
he's put on a little bit of size, but he's still quite small, yeah.
And good to see Heath Scotland back. Next game, what are they calling this? Q Clash?
Q-Clash,
Yeah, Q-
number
Ah.
5.
Battle of the Bridge Q Clash.
Yeah.
Just call it a
Nah.
derby. Get over it.
Battle of the Bridge is Sydney GWS, but
Brisbane.
yeah, this is the Q-Clash, and it'll be interesting to see Brisbane bounce back, because after their sublime NAB Cup performances, they haven't really shown the consistent form.
They got beaten by Patrick Dangerfield last week, and Patrick Dangerfield alone.
And the Bulldogs before that, who really shouldn't be such a threatening side this year. But it's going to be interesting, because Gold Coast have been in good form. They've been quite impressive in the clearances. They've won both of those against St Kilda and Sydney as well, which I thought was a fantastic effort last week. And I think that's where they can get on top of players like Ablett and... Well, Charlie Dixon's had a fantastic year in the ruck, and I think Dixon versus Smith, if they can curb Leuenberger in the ruck and stop giving Maloney and Redden and Rockcliffe and all those players first use, I think if they get it forward, they can win.
Yeah, Brisbane, because I don't think the Gold Coast play that well when Ablett doesn't fire, and I can see Ablett not firing tonight.
Gold Coast.
I got Brisbane.
I'm going to go Brisbane. In the previous 2 matches, Ablett accumulated 33 and 37 possessions, despite Reigns being on
Jeez, that blows my theory out the
sometimes. So I reckon he might have a big one.
Dude.
Pray for Jordan.
Sam May's in for his debut as well, the number 8 draft pick, wasn't it, or
Yeah,
number 7?
Number 8. Sorry? Either.
Top 10.
One of definitely
Top
one of
10.
them.
Yeah.
I think we'll rush through the last 3 games. Richmond versus the Western Bulldogs at Etihad Stadium tomorrow.
Richmond.
Yeah, Richmond.
Wow, no faith. Absolutely no
No one's
faith
given
in
the
it.
ball.
Sorry,
No
boys.
faith in the
No faith
Bulldogs.
in the
Oh,
Dogs.
the Bulldogs will give it a crack, and I don't think Richmond will win by too much, but I think
It'll be a close game. Under 3 goals.
Good to see. Oh, sorry. I was thinking. I thought Piggin was coming. Wood. Sorry, that was the one I was looking for. Easton Wood back in. I think he's, from what I saw from the last couple of years, in a side in which there weren't many contributors. He's done okay, and he's worked hard off
the
that
flowing
half-back
locks.
role and locked down players when he's had the chance. I think he's a handy inclusion for the Bulldogs. But yeah, Richmond will be too strong.
I think Shane Edwards at centre half forward named this week. I think Richmond will win.
Gun.
Collingwood Hawthorn at the MCG, 3:20 tomorrow with that weird start because Channel 7 like to run into the news like they.
Sure, it's not 4:20. 4:20.
3:20.
320.
320.
Yeah, I'm trying to make a joke.
Throws my whole day around.
Sorry,
You guys suck.
sorry,
4:20 Blaze.
it's too early for obscure reference.
It's not that obscure. Anyway, what is it? Collingwood Hawthorn.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hawthorn.
I got the Pies.
Yeah, I reckon the Pies have actually been quite good. Last week, their win over Carlton, their surge late in the last quarter was fantastic, and I think they continue that form into this week.
I'm going to go with the Hawks.
No Jolly, no Maxwell, no Collingwood.
Yeah.
Hawthorn all the way.
Big call.
They're too important.
No Maxwell, no Collingwood.
Maxwell.
Jeez.
Maxwell is the number 1 intercept player in the comp. Believe it or not, I know. I was blown away by this.
Well, I've never seen him play on a man, so good on him. He's doing something.
He's the Dustin Fletcher. He's doing the Dustin Fletcher role.
He is. Probably better than Dustin
he,
Fletcher is.
he's quite a big out for Collingwood. Jolly, I think they can cover him. They covered for him last year and the year before that. He seems to be injured every single year at some point, so I think they can cover for him with Hudson back in, and yeah, I think Collingwood will win.
Congratulations to Ben Hudson, by the way, because this is his 4th club or his 3rd club or something.
His 4th retirement.
4th club, so he's only got another 14 to go.
Yeah. He'll get there.
He will.
think the final
Well,
game...
that's just AFL clubs as well.
Oh yeah, he's got to work his way through the VFL and then the WRFL, the EDFL, all that. He's got a lot.
I'm expecting him in Gaelic in a couple of
He's
years.
got a lot to go. He'll be playing for the Irish in the international rules at some stage.
And the final clash for the
Ben
weekend,
Hudson.
the showdown.
Oh, who cares?
The state of South Australia cares.
Yeah, no one cares about the state of South Australia. Sorry, South Australians. You're wonderful people. Adelaide.
Anyone? Adelaide? Port? Anyone?
I'll go to Adelaide.
I'm going Adelaide.
It'll be close.
Port are good, but Adelaide.
Often the result in the showdown isn't exactly what you would expect. Often it goes the other way. So I'm going to tip Port Adelaide for this one.
Port are going to win this.
If you get a chance, check out the banter that's been going on between the Adelaide and Port Adelaide Twitter accounts.
Or I'd rather not.
It's funny.
No, it's not.
Kind of funny.
It's not.
You have like 4 chromosomes.
All right, plugs.
Can we end on that insult?
And absolutely no sense of humour.
Check out boundforglorynews.com as well as following us on Twitter at boundforgloryfm and bound4 as in the number Glory News.
Numeral.
And yeah.
Is that all for today?
I believe so.
It's a wrap.
Places to be. See a man about a donkey, etc.
Or some illegal drugs.
You're also good.
Maybe you'll be under investigation next, Jordan.
420.
Oh.
So if you don't hear from us, we are live next week, actually. I think I should point this out. Next
We'll hear from
Sunday,
us, whether you like it or not.
the 21st of April. Hopefully I got that date right.
Dude,
at
that's
10
the
o'clock.
day after 420.
Yes.
Oh my god. Well, you'll be
Should we
hearing-
blaze up?
We should definitely blaze up for that, I reckon. Just absolutely just tear it down.
Okay, this is falling apart.
Belt some trees.
We've been Bound for Glory. Catch us
Still
next
are. We
week
will be next
live,
week.
10 o'clock next Sunday, the
Haters.
21st of April on 90.7 FM and sin.org.au. We're out.
Drugs.
I'm invincible. I'm paying money. The girl's happy. She's got no money. I got my rocks off. Oh, how good is this?